Good morning, namaskara. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning for the Swiss country session at the Bengaluru Tech Summit. This is our fourth participation and we're delighted to continue to contribute to this wonderful summit. In the past, we have featured expertise from Switzerland in drones, in food tech, and in blockchain. And this year, we're delighted to bring our contribution in the field of cybersecurity. My name is Jonas Brunsvig. I am the CEO of Swissnex in India and the Consul General of Switzerland in Bangalore. Swissnex is an initiative from the State Secretariat of Education, Research and Innovation, and it operates in collaboration with the Swiss Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we're present in some of the world's most innovative and dynamic knowledge hubs, which is why we have been in Bangalore for the past 11 years, knowing that Bangalore and India at large is a very important player in the knowledge economy of today and of tomorrow. While you may know Switzerland through Bollywood or through some of its signature food like chocolate and cheese, Switzerland is actually one of the world's most advanced economies, knowledge economies in particular. As a landlocked country without natural resources, Switzerland invested heavily in its citizens' brainpower. And today, the main ingredient of the Swiss success is its knowledge, the knowledge that the Swiss economy is able to produce and share with the world. Which means that the contributions that Switzerland brings to the world are very much centered around knowing and figuring out how to do very complex things. At Swissnex, we are driven by pursuing collaborations and partnerships between India and Switzerland and beyond that try to address some of society's pressing challenges of our day and time. It makes sense for us this year to focus on cybersecurity as so much of our lives have moved to the digital space. And this is an important topic, particularly in the context of the Bengaluru Tech Summit, because of course Bengaluru is a city that is known for its IT prowess. It is one of the world's leading hubs in this space, and by bringing stakeholders together from both countries, we hope to advance some of the solutions to the challenges that we face in this sector. We want to congratulate the government of Karnataka and the city of Bengaluru for its timely leadership in organizing this important yearly event in the Bengaluru Tech Summit. At Swissnex, we have a dedicated team of 16 changemakers who are working on the pursuit of inclusive prosperity, urgent progress, and the vibrant exchange between Switzerland and India. And we do so by collaborating with startups, universities, think tanks, NGOs, and others in the public and private sector to connect tomorrow.
Thank you, Jonas, for introducing how we at Swissnex in India and the Consulate General of Switzerland operate here from Bangalore. Now, coming to the topic at hand, the topic that we have chosen for this GIS session this year is about how cyber resilience is an urgent need in this new digital world. In the last few years, especially since the beginning of last year, cybersecurity has attained growing importance in all debates concerning national security. Cyber capabilities are an essential element of national power. The coronavirus pandemic has created new challenges for governments and businesses as they adapt to a new operating model in which working from home is a new normal. Now, companies are accelerating their digital transformation in where cybersecurity is now becoming a huge risk. The reputational, operational, legal, and compliance implications could be considerable if these risks are not managed. India is at a much earlier stage in her cyber journey, having strengths or potential strengths in some of the subsectors of cybersecurity. According to Kaspersky's telemetry, when the world went into lockdown in March of last year, the number of brute force attacks in different remote desktop protocols went from 93.1 million in February of 2020 to 277.1 million in March. That's a 197% increase. The attacks in India went up from 1.3 million to 3.3 million in the same time frame. From April of 2020, these attacks have never gone below 300 million over month and have reached a high of about 409 million in November of 2020. In India, the peak we saw was 4.5 million in July of 2020. In February of 2021, we saw monthly attacks of about 377.1 million, a far cry from the 93.1 million that we saw at the same time last year. In India, we are in January and February of 2021 alone, we saw a total of 15 million attacks, with roughly about 9 million coming in February alone. So the attacks have gone up, and they are going to stay up the whole time around. This shows that the urgency in cyber resilience is now a very, very important factor when it comes to this new digital world. With that, I would now like to introduce our panelists to start talking about how can we counter this. So firstly, we have got Candid Wuest from Acronis. Candid?
Hi, my name is Candid Wuest. I'm the VP of Cyber Protection Research at Acronis, which basically means I look at all the new cyber threats out there and research any new methods that the attackers are using, and of course, create corresponding prevention methods if needed. I work out of Schaffhausen in Switzerland, which is one of the 2 Acronis headquarters, with Singapore being the second headquarter globally. Acronis is the leader of cyber protection, which basically is a holistic integration of cybersecurity and data protection. At Acronis, we strongly believe that data, application, system, and productivity of every organization should be protected against loss, theft, and downtime. And this regardless of caused by cyber attacks, hardware failure, or human error. With our unique combination of automation and integration, you gain all of the prevention, detection, response, recovery, and forensic capabilities that you actually need today to combat the threats in the cyberspace.
And now that we have heard from Candid, now let's move to Sandra from Futurae. So Sandra, over to you.
Hi, my name is Sandra Tobler. I'm CEO of the cybersecurity company Futurae, and we innovate in the area of strong authentication for users, transactions, security, as well as fraud detection. And we do that for e-commerce, banks, or any digital customer portal to make sure there is no identity theft of the user or any other sensitive information.
So thank you, Sandra. Now for our final speaker, it's Francesca from CyberPeace Institute. So Francesca, could you please take a few minutes and give us a quick introduction of yourself as well?
Hello, my name is Francesca Bosco, and I'm Chief of Staff and Head of Foresignt at the CyberPeace Institute. The CyberPeace Institute is a non-governmental organization that seeks to enhance the stability of cyberspace by supporting vulnerable communities, analyzing attacks collaboratively, and advancing responsible behavior. The core mission of the Institute is to ensure the rights of people to security, dignity, and equity in cyberspace. The Institute provides a unique added value to vulnerable communities, with a particular focus on servicing NGOs that are active in essential services, with a distinct multi-stakeholder, evidence-led, and human-centric approach. Through this lens, we are seeing indeed that digital transformation is drastically shaping a new reality for people across the globe. The advantages of technological solutions are driving better and more efficient delivery, spread, and effectiveness of essential services like healthcare and utilities. More people are able to reap the benefits of digital solutions and online services every day. However, as services and people move online, so do issues of security. Across the pandemic, when we have most relied on healthcare services, malicious actors have also taken advantage of new digital technologies and have targeted the most essential functions of society for a variety of goals. Additionally, also other actors have taken advantage of the increased presence of people online to stoke fears and create distrust in both the digital and physical realms. Anyone who cares about security, but at the same time about innovation, economic development, personal privacy or civil liberties, and ultimately about human rights, they should care about cybersecurity. Lack of security within the growth of digital solutions has the potential to cause great harm to each of these areas. In targeting of essential services, vulnerable population and society as a whole can cause great harm. In order to ensure CyberPeace and protect vulnerable populations, actors from government, private sector, civil society organization, and the concerned population themselves need to work together to conceptualize, to create, to implement effective security solutions that work within the context of specific areas. And it is with a great pleasure that I'm here today as a civil society member exactly in this context. And I will give you some examples of how we are engaging in the different sectors. And it is our hope that our expertise can empower communities in order to secure their online and digital transformation.
Thank you, Francesca. So now that we have heard from all three panelists, now let's try to understand what does digital resilience mean and where do that play a role in today's world. Now, in the last 5 years, we have seen a lot of cities transforming into smart cities. We have heard this new term called IoT, or Internet of Things, which is automating the way we live, right? Now how does that impact digital security for us? So let's try to understand that and go from one panelist to the next to see what they see, right? So firstly, we have got Candid, who is going to explain it from his perspective from Acronis. So over to you, Candid.
We have seen a tremendous increase in data being gathered and collected by IoT devices, M2M communication, and smart city sensors per se. This, of course, led to an increased demand for privacy and availability. People want that their data is stored securely, and they don't want that they reveal more than is actually needed. And of course, this requires encryption, as well as ensuring that there is a process to track the flow of private information across systems. A driving factor for this are, of course, the introduction of privacy laws and regulations around the world. On the other hand, the central systems also need to ensure that the data is actually not lost and is available when needed, so that it can provide to the value that the service actually wants to give to the people. And this requires the classical business continuity planning and of course also disaster recovery, as you never know what happens. The gathering of more data has led to some advances in handling digital identities and authentication management, because that is what is needed to access the information. Although our recent cyber resilience study shows that 47% of IT professionals are not using multi-factor authentication on their account, and that unfortunately is a bit scary. There are also interesting efforts being made for working with data with privacy in mind. Like for example, homomorphic encryption or federated learning with AI that can help you keep the privacy.
Many thanks, Candid, for your insight. Now let's look at it from Sandra's perspective at Futurae. What are her thoughts? So Sandra, could you share your insights as well, please?
So in general, you can see a more personalized services. A lot of industries try to create more digital touch points with the users, be it again in finance, insurance, health, IoT you mentioned, or even in mobility or smart city. So the more you have personalized information, of course, you also have more data that's actually very valuable. I always say every information that you can sell on the dark web for money is actually data that needs adequate protection, because criminals have a certain interest in acquiring those and making commercial benefit out of those. So it is important that for any sort of digitization in such an area, adequate security is taken into account when designing, which is specifically in the area of account takeover or to protect from identity theft. This is what Futurae does with the platform of strong authentication, that we are actually protecting users from such identity theft. So making sure that on the one hand side, you don't need passwords anymore. We can do fully passwordless user experiences, but in the other area also adding strong authentication to make it not possible that even if you use passwords, that when there are old passwords or stolen passwords used, that there is an additional layer of security that protects the users from a potential theft of personal information or sensitive data.
Many thanks, Sandra. So now let's move to Francesca from CyberPeace Institute. So Francesca, how do you think digital security has evolved in the last 5 years, considering all the different things that we are now dealing with?
A good, interesting environment is that when we consider the evolution of digital security in the last 5 years, we have to think that, for example, IoT and smart solutions have moved into critical areas. I mentioned before healthcare. Think also about, for example, water purification and delivery, electric grids, transportation, emergency response. Networks and networked devices in each of these sectors provide distinct security challenges, including, for example, man-in-the-middle attacks, including denial of services, and increased attack surfaces that can provide entry points for ransomware attacks. Each increase in networks and devices provides more points of intrusion and more security risk in these sectors. Attacks against these sectors can disrupt not only the delivery of essential services, but also have a concrete and negative impact on people's lives. And with the increase in smart solutions, smart cities indeed will bring digital spaces closer to people and across multiple portions in their daily lives. They will digitize the delivery of essential services, and there's also the potential to leverage the use of technology to improve the sustainability of our urban areas and provide a great benefit for historically marginalized communities. Think about the delivery of essential services to informal settlement areas. So the potential that we have through smart cities is really great to build actually CyberPeace. But at the same time, smart cities bring also distinct challenges that need to be addressed in order to unlock the benefits. And when security is not ensured across the city systems, it can have a deep impact on vulnerable population within urban areas. For example, essential services that I mentioned before can be left vulnerable to attacks that can shut them down, cutting off products that people rely upon for daily survival. Malicious actors can have access to large amounts of sensitive data gathered through interaction with city systems that can impact the security and dignity of people. Increased data collection can intrude into the daily life and activities of people and intimidate them. For example, not to take certain actions. Think about protests and organize for fear of retribution. Secure cities are able to bring growth to CyberPeace, but lack of security in cities poses a great risk to CyberPeace. Many security solutions have been proposed to overcome this. Let's think about AI-based encryption, end-to-end cryptography systems for wireless sensor network, security by design, blockchain-based credential systems specifically for privacy concerns. While there are security solutions available, the issue is getting cities and operators to employ them. Some cities have already taken security as a major issue, and therefore they have, for example, instituted a security by design approach to their smart projects and requires, for example, private sector partners to prioritize security in their systems. And the security of the smart system itself is included in their national cybersecurity strategy. Singapore is a good example of that. Other smart cities, however, do not put the same emphasis on security. And they don't have to have, for example, a cyber strategy in place for city systems. Also, it's difficult to ensure security across a public-private partnership. Many cities do not have risk management plans in regard to the security of third-party operators, and therefore, they cannot ensure the integrity of their system across smart projects. There have been big efforts to ensure security in the past 5 years, but the problem has been implementation. So cities and public sector's actors often do not have the personnel or the budget needed to effectively implement security solutions. They often partner with private sector's actors who may not have priorities set on security, or it might be perceived as a sort of like unnecessary expense. And coordination in public-private partnership might not be efficient enough to effectively implement the timely security measures. and also insufficient digital literacy across the populations. Interacting with smart projects can undermine the security, basically increasing the intrusion vectors.
Thank you, Francesca. So now that we have heard from all three panelists, now the one common thing that you might have seen coming from all three of them was the increased digital transactions. Now, how does that enable or impact enabling digital trust from 2020 onwards, especially because of the pandemic? That number would have gone further up, right? So now let's try to understand what happens in that scenario. So firstly, this time we'll take it up from Sandra, and we'll go again one by one through all the three panelists. So Sandra, your thoughts, please.
A lot of customers of ours definitely saw an increase in the rise of number of, for instance, phishing attacks. So phishing emails become more and more sophisticated and mimicking any sort of authorities or banking services, specifically connected to COVID-19. So they were sent to customers in order to get sensitive information. So they look like they come from health authorities or banks, or even that they may be about financial support available in the wake of the pandemic, but which are actually a lure asking customers to provide login credentials or validate their account or identity information. So this is a typical fraud. I would say a lot of other industries definitely also saw a lot of ransomware attacks. They become more refined. So there are even services that require companies to pay on a regular basis, not to be victim of ransomware attacks. So these are typical attacks that definitely saw an increase during the pandemic time. On the other side, at Futurae, we have definitely also seen a lot of accelerated adoption of digital services, be it in digital banking, where both critical incumbent organizations put digital services at the top of their agenda, as well as even higher user adoption than before of our customers. So seamless user authentication becomes pivotal to engage customers in using services. Strong authentication for transactions has also become the norm. This was, for instance, pushed also through regulatory pressure in the European Union. So the technologies that have before maybe been considered mostly by the top tier financial institutions have now seen a broad adoption across e-commerce and financial services.
Thank you, Sandra, for your insights. Now let's move towards Francesca from CyberPeace Institute to see what are her thoughts towards enabling digital trust in 2020 or from 2020 onwards. So Francesca, over to you.
We have also to think about this when we think about how the impact of technology uptake will affect digital trust. At the CyberPeace Institute, as I mentioned before, we focus on technologies that impact vulnerable communities in cyberpeace to understand the opportunities, but also the threats that these technologies might pose. And the world is really at a point where a combination of pandemic and its impact on the global economy comes at a critical time, where we see increased societal polarization, spike in distrust in institutions. At the same time, technology can be a tool of empowerment and a tool of oppression, and security and foreign policy equities in decision-making around technology risk, undermining the trust needed to fully unlock its potential. Rapid digitization increases the attack surface, and often its pace is not matched by the efforts to secure it or by the international community as a whole, showcasing responsible behavior in cyberspace. So we, as a society, at the same time, we are creating the condition for benefiting from technology, but at the same time, we're also undermining the trust in digital technology. Individuals should be able to access the technology without concern for their safety, security, and privacy. And today, we're not there yet. What we are risking is that because of negative trends, we will not be able to unlock the full potential of technology and especially the critical technology that can improve the human condition and increase digital trust. The challenges that we have witnessed, and they emerge specifically during the COVID pandemic, are, for example, related to leveraging disinformation to erode trust and facilitate cyber attacks through what it was called an infodemic. So infodemic, an overload of information, often false unverified about a platform, about a problem, and especially during a major crisis. And often is driven by fake or fabricated information, is driven at the same time also by cyber operations that modify or that can alter or falsify genuine information. We've seen that the threat actors exploit the information ambiguity of crises or events, such as the COVID pandemic, to further their malicious activities such as malspam and phishing attacks. We've seen, for example, troll farm that will seek to disinform or spread false rumors, or, for example, the use of legitimate vaccination campaigns to prepare and send mass emails for phishing victims. In terms of new challenges, we have also encountered quite a number in relation to the Cyber Incident Tracer for Health, which is a unique platform that we have built to provide a data-driven understanding of the impact of cyber attacks on healthcare. One of the biggest problems that we have when we try to communicate knowledge and awareness about cyber attacks to make at the same time decision makers, policy makers, the different actors that I mentioned before, like, for example, businesses and civil society actors, but also us as individuals to understand the potential impact of cyber attack, is that it's often difficult to visualize. So we created a tool, the Cyber Incident Tracer for Health, that can really support that increase in level of knowledge, awareness, and understanding. And understanding the scale and the societal impact of cyber attacks on healthcare can lead to change and can help prevent such attacks. So it's really a tool for empowerment. On the contrary, limited visibility and data on the impact of cyber attacks has complicated policymaking. So often many states do not have a requirement for essential services to report cyber incident to authorities, and this creates issues in knowing the full scale of, for example, the concerned population, and we don't necessarily know which services and data have been impacted. So lack of knowledge of a full scale of attack and issue can breed mistrust as well. Without a full picture, the threat can be blown out of proportion and see the further distrust in digital environments. So we see how basically the exploitation of the pandemic, both from an infodemic point of view and cyber attacks point of view, is kind of like fueling the distrust in the digital ecosystem exactly when we need most to rely on technology because of technology uptake in the healthcare sector. And again, a tool that we decided to build, especially to bridge this gap in terms of understanding of what is happening to people when there is a cyber attack against an hospital, can be seen via our Cyber Incident Tracer platform.
Thank you, Francesca. And now finally, let's go towards Acronis and Candid. Please share your thoughts on the same topic.
Digital trust is more important than ever before. And it's not just the direct trust into a company, but also the delegated trust that you have to keep in mind. We experienced this, for example, with software supply chain attacks, like the SolarWinds breach at the beginning of the year, where attackers misused the trusted relationship for a software vendor and then misused the updates to distribute malware to their clients. Or the many incidents of data leaks, like for example with Facebook, where hundreds of millions of user account data has been stolen and later sold on underground markets. And such stolen data packages are then of course misused by cyber criminals to create personalized phishing emails or conduct other cyber attacks in the future. Very often, the data breaches happened because of misconfiguration of cloud services or weak passwords to begin with. And there is currently a lack of digital trust between citizens, governments, and cooperation altogether when it comes to online services. Too often has there been a data breach and data has been misused. And I guess this distrust clearly was demonstrated by the various discussions around COVID-19 tracing apps. I think it is therefore important to have transparent communication and clear processes in place to see what data is collected and why is it collected. It can also help if the end user has the option to actually opt out and to verify any changes and kind of adapt if they want to change anything.
Thank you, Candid, for your thoughts. So the three panelists, and now firstly they talked about the past, the last 5 years, and they talked about the present. Now let's move towards the future, right? Now, in the wake of all these things that we have covered so far, how do governments and businesses, different corporates, startups, right? How do they respond to these challenges, these opportunities that may come in the next 5 years? How do the governments of Switzerland and beyond respond to these challenges? So let's first this time go towards Francesca. So Francesca, over to you.
When we think about which are the challenges ahead of us and also how we can respond. So let's try to look at the bright side. We have to think that in the future, malicious actors will continue to target critical infrastructure services that are often underprepared for cyber attacks, and therefore vulnerable communities can be a target. And they will leverage the lack of cyber hygiene of critical infrastructure professionals, such as healthcare personnel. And also we've seen a trend of supply chain attacks, so services that can face attacks simply by using software that has been compromised without their knowledge. And what is also impacting in the area of cybersecurity is, for example, the use of new technologies that can bring great benefits to security, but also cause new concerns with malicious use. One of the areas that we're looking at is artificial intelligence and how it will impact the life of vulnerable communities, like, for example, NGOs that are active in critical sectors, or specific communities that are active in very sensitive sectors, like peace mediators. There has been already much discussion on how artificial intelligence-based solutions can improve cybersecurity, for example, for threat hunting, vulnerability management, and so on. But on the other hand, artificial intelligence can also be used to augment malware and greatly improve intrusion techniques. This kind of like further puts vulnerable population at risk, and it fosters the asymmetry in knowledge and defense against advances in intrusion. Also, as mentioned before, essential services, government interaction, and even work and basic societal interaction are increasing relying on digital solutions. And the drastic increase in the digital service in the next 5 years represent a problem of securing the complete landscape and finding ways to take steps to respond to cyber threats. Some states have already taken steps to increase responses to increase in cyber threats. And indeed, governmental organizations have stepped up their game at both a national and international level, and we can indeed see increased efforts that, from a variety number of areas pertaining to cybersecurity when it comes to national and international posture have been taken. But the problem is that we need to move into implementing the commitments that governments have taken, and also to take action on the security issues of the next 5 years, definitely where we need more responses. This requires a collective effort. A collective effort that goes through a wide range of actions, like, for example, ensuring that malicious actors are held accountable, and ensuring that vulnerable communities have access to capacity building programs. And on this regard, we set up a unique network of volunteers that is matching available volunteers from corporate sectors that are willing to donate their time to support civil society organizations that are in need to boost their cybersecurity posture. And we are already cooperating with a number of Swiss actors, and as of October, we launched the program globally. And it's really a unique experience, which is basically increasing the potential also of civil society organizations to fully benefit of the digitization, to also service better the vulnerable population they are in touch with. And regarding cities, when we were discussing about how security can flow from ineffective cooperation between governments and private sector actors, that's why we need to invest in creating this dialogue between businesses and governments, but also with the civil society and with the academia, because it's not enough simply to basically to consult with the different actors, but we need a sort of like co-creation and co-design processes, because we want to optimize security solutions and produce initiatives that are really targeting the need of the various communities. The key multi-stakeholder approach is key to address the challenges that we have in front of us in terms of innovation, digital trust, and cybersecurity. And there's no actor that can do this alone, even the best security solution provider. The CyberPeace Institute positions itself in the Swiss and the global environment as a unique actor, because on one hand, we want to amplify existing initiatives, so we're working with a set of different partners. But at the same time, we are also thinking about creative and sort of like unique, innovative ideas with a very concrete impact that can support the communities that we're working with. I mentioned before the CyberPeace Builders, I mentioned the Cyber Incident Tracer. These are actual tools that on one hand can not only benefit the various communities, but then can also empower them, because they are supporting the creation of knowledge, awareness, and ultimately we can better support the benefit of our rights in cyberspace, but also beyond the cyberspace, in our everyday life. And through our international interventions like knowledge sharing and operations, we're able to assist also other actors and initiatives in their work, for example, in building the Sustainable Development Goals. In the field, we are providing assistance to local NGOs to better protect them against the cyber threats, so via cyber awareness initiatives, but also, as I mentioned before, via the CyberPeace Builders. And we are sharing knowledge on attacks to better build the cyber resilience. And we're also working at the international level to build peace, justice, and strong institutions to create an international environment that is safe from cyber attack and that can also build towards the 2030 agenda goals. We are also working across multi-stakeholder boundaries to respond to the challenges facing in the digital world. So we are interacting with states, as well as we are partnering with corporates. And we do this in a collaborative effort that is bringing at the table at the same time also expertise coming from the academia and the civil society environment. We truly believe that is through bridging cooperation and building trust across communities that we can work together to bring about cyber peace.
Thank you, Francesca. So now let's move to Candid to see how Acronis plans to respond to these kinds of challenges in the future. So Candid, over to you.
Organizations have started to realize that they have to protect themselves against the cyber attacks and are slowly implementing better defenses. Unfortunately, many companies still struggle as they don't really have the expertise nor the resources to implement all those best practices and recommendations quickly. On the threat front, we expect that classical cyber attacks, such for example as the ransomware encryption, will continue to grow in sophistication and frequency. Similar things for phishing emails that are still there to try and steal your passwords and are at an all-time high at the moment because they still work for the attackers quite well. And this is why you need to reduce the complexity of the IT infrastructure overall by consolidation and integration of solution. Automation, specifically with AI, is another big growth area that can help you save time. And I guess the cybercriminals, they are already using AI and automation in their attacks, so why shouldn't the companies use it as well for their advantage? But it is important as well to keep cybersecurity, or more precisely, cyber protection, on the top of the agenda of companies and governments. Cyber protection needs to be there in the discussion right from the start and be considered at all projects. Because if you just add it at the end as an afterthought and sprinkle it on top, it's not going to work out. In order to help with this, Acronis is engaged with various task force and discussions, and of course we also provide our security expertise and run various awareness trainings for customers, partners, and end customers.
Thank you, Candid. Now let's talk to Sandra to see what are her thoughts on this topic as well. So Sandra, back to you.
So currently in Switzerland and Europe, we definitely see an increased cloud adoption across applications and use cases. And this is picking up a lot. And in security, what we see is that organizations more and more want the best of breed technologies. So they move to API-based infrastructure where they can actually add innovative products in a very fast way. They also want best of breed. So software in security, specifically in an area like where we're working in strong authentication, cannot be static anymore. Where in the past you were engaging in long-term IT projects to do a small modification of maybe a new security type taken into account. So this has to be a lot faster. So what we see is that companies are expecting solutions to take quickly into account new fraud models, new requirements that come from operating systems or any other sort of requirement that is important. So security is all about speed, and we see that also in the way that infrastructure is newly designed and implemented.
Thank you, Sandra. With that, we have come to an end to the panel discussion. I want to take this opportunity to thank our three panelists for their time and insights into why cyber resilience is so important and urgent need in this digital world. Hopefully, this gave you cognizance of how a Switzerland expertise could be leveraged in the field of cybersecurity for collaborative growth. With that, I pass on the baton to Jonas, who is now going to do the closing remarks for the Swiss GIS session for BTS 2021. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in today's Switzerland country session. Thank you to our wonderful speakers for sharing their relevant insights with us. And thank you again to the government of Karnataka for organizing this important forum. If you want to learn more about our work, please visit us at swissnext.org/India and do get in touch with us if you would like to collaborate. We look forward to hearing from you and to working together.